And a big reaction episode of Blue Review today. So big that we brought on some friends, some good friends of Greg Bergman from our Dodger Blue 1958 account, our good friends over there. Of course, Matthew Moreno, the executive editor of Dodger Blue, and our friend Jeff Spiegel, the YouTube and podcast host over there at Dodger Blue as well. So, guys, welcome to the show. We appreciate you coming on. How we doing today, real quick?
Yeah, well, thanks for having us first. Second, I know I'll speak a little bit for Jeff. We're still kind of shifting through all the craziness that's been going on, but it's definitely been exciting times now with the regular season about to start again.
Yeah, can't wait. Can't wait for opening day for actual baseball to be the storyline we're talking about. But, you know, when the most expensive player in baseball history is involved in a theft and gambling scandal, I understand why it deserves talking about.
Do we ever think we're going to get back to just baseball? Come on now.
It's true.
Hopefully.
But you guys are right. We have a lot to dive into today. Shohei Ohtani addressed the media yesterday. He made statements, and we will dive into as much as we can within this 25-minute period, 30-minute period we have together. But before we do so, Greg, let me just get us started. The LAX is our partner here at Blue Review, so shout out to them for being our sponsor at LAX and Los Angeles International Airport. Changes are arriving daily, reducing traffic, saving guest time, all these good things for us and for you. So if you want to learn more, you can find that out at flylax.com/transforming LAX. So Greg, I'll pass this along to you. Let's get this going. Oof, what a day.
Yeah, no, it was pretty crazy yesterday. So, I mean, Matt, Jeff, I think the only first place to start in is that we have to find out, like, what did you actually think of the way that Shohei presented himself when he did talk? We'll start with you, Jeff. Matt. Excuse me.
Okay. I thought he did well. I know you and I were kind of talking about it beforehand. I wasn't necessarily anticipating him to take any questions. I assumed that it was going to be basically a prepared statement that had been vetted by his attorneys and his agent and all that. And that's what it ended up being. But I thought Ohtani was a little bit more, he said more than I anticipated. I thought it would be, this is what happened. They're investigating it. I really can't say much, but I thought, he basically went out there and doubled down on his stance, if you will, and outlined in his mind kind of the order that things sort of happened in, which did match up with a lot of the timelines that ESPN and LA Times have sort of put together since their initial stories. And so now I think it's interesting to see, is that we're going to get any sort of response or pushback from him?
Yeah, we had a show the night before, and we kind of said, all right, this is going to go one of two ways. Either we're going to get a bunch of no comments, and my lawyers won't let me speak on that, or Ohtani's going to come out and be forceful in what he says. And thankfully, I think for a Dodgers fan, it was the latter. He was forceful in that I never bet on sports. I did not bet on baseball, and Ippei stole money from me and has been lying the whole time. I think those are the two biggest questions that we wanted to hear answered straight from Ohtani's mouth, and we got those answers. Not to say he answered everything. There's lots more we could get into, but I think if you're a Dodgers fan, the best case scenario was him forcefully saying those two things, because now he has put himself on the line. Like if there was any doubt about if he was lying, this would have been no comment, I'll let my lawyers handle it. So the fact that he was as convicted as he was in front of the camera, I think is great news for the Dodgers.
And what you said, that it was convicted, he didn't even show that conviction. He just was, it's just how he was. Like he really, I thought he really handled himself very, very well. He was stoic. But he was very forceful in the fact that I did not do these things. And also It didn't feel like a prepared statement to me. I know he looked from a piece of paper, but it sounded like he just kind of went down the timeline for us and made sure to hit certain points that said, like, I did not bet on this. He stole money from me. These are all the things that happened. And the crazy part about this is Ippei and his stories are now in line. They're the same stories from both of them. Ippei saying he knew nothing, and Shohei saying I knew nothing. This is the first time that we have a storyline that is just flat. We're not saying, oh, well, you said this and then you said that. So it's kind of all over the place. So I like the fact that that's kind of what we got. And you want to believe the person, right? You want to believe Shohei. I actually did believe him yesterday. Did you feel like you were believable of him in that sense?
Go ahead, Jeff. You can take it.
Yeah. I mean, I think my default is I will trust somebody until they give me reason not to trust them. And, on Ippei's hand, We have lots of reasons not to trust him. Obviously, the lies about his resume that have come out in the last few days, I think, only hurt his cause. Whereas Ohtani, by all accounts, has been revered by teammates, been revered by people, has handled himself well. We even have stories about we have corroborating evidence from former teammates who said this guy doesn't even care about other sports. He thinks gambling is dumb. And so I have no reason not to believe Shohei Ohtani. I know some people will poke holes and say, well, how could a guy have access to his money? Like, the more I learned, the more I recognize that when guys make as much money as him and have personal assistants, or in this case, translator / personal assistant, there's lots of people that actually have access to money that may seem weird to somebody like me who has, $300 in my bank account. But so to me, like, his story lines up. It's not to say we have every question answered, but I believe Shohei Ohtani, which is part of the reason why I think yesterday was such a great day.
So,
go ahead, Jeff. Greg, sorry.
No, I was just going to move on. Just looking through. So I have a woman on Twitter. I know you guys have the transcription of what happened on Dodger Blue. So if you want to see it, you can go in there. A woman on Twitter from a Jack Harris tweet actually put the whole thing in tweet form. And so I'm just going to kind of go. There's a few things in here that I thought were just interesting, and I'm not really sure. Those are the questions, Jeff, that you're talking about. Like, there's going to be questions. I kind of want to see where you guys land on these things. So the first thing was initially Ippei-san told my agent and others that the payments were made on behalf of a friend, not himself. This was later admitted to be his own debt. So I guess I never realized that he went to somebody and was saying that he's paying for somebody else. How did you take that, Matt?
Yeah, that was surprising, because then at this point, it's almost like that's another layer to this whole thing, because we've been taking it as Ohtani's account was used to pay for Ippei's bet, gambling debts, and now this statement that you read, that kind of I guess a little bit more of a maybe true translation from what Ohtani was saying in Japanese suggests that, like, is there other people that maybe Ohtani's money was being used for, or it was Ippei still trying to like deflect attention from him somehow? Maybe he thought it'd be better if, for whatever reason, he said, no, it's a different person whose gambling debt is being paid off and not just mine. So it's a little confusing and, I mean, concerning too. And I'm sure this is something that the investigator, whether it's the IRS or MLB or even the Dodgers themselves and Ohtani's lawyers, I'm sure also are going to be, really looking at very closely to figure out what exactly happened and what his money was being used for.
Yeah, I think Ippei continues to fall down the list of credibility here because, again, if you were just charting out the course of a human being, we get the original story. And again, I defaulted to, well, I could see Shohei being a guy who just covers his friend's debts. And it didn't make sense why an Ohtani spokesperson would say something that wasn't true initially, right? But then as we've learned more about Ippei, and it's like, well, he lied about his college. He lied about sort of who he's worked for and interpreted for in the past. And I just traced that trajectory out. Like, it's not even difficult for me to believe that even when he was caught, his first response was, no, I was actually paying off somebody else's debts with your money, Shohei. Like that seems like the type, we all probably know people like this, right? Where it's like, even when you're caught in the lie, you're still grasping for one more lie to sort of deflect as if it's going to help. And so this is not, I didn't catch this the original time. So if this translation is correct, it's helpful, but it's not at all surprising to me based on, the scraps of information we're collecting about this guy.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to lie, you're going to lie about basically everything. But see,
Right.
And I see it in the chat a little bit. Like I was skeptical. I'm going to tell you that I was skeptical of, as we should be. I mean, We didn't hear Shohei say anything. So in that time. So what was it? It was from Wednesday or Thursday to Monday where he didn't say anything. So that's 4 or 5 days that we had just our minds to think about what's going on. I'm not saying that's wrong in any sense, but because of that, I had questions. We all had questions. It didn't make sense. And when you hear stories like this, your first thought goes to, okay, I want to believe the guy, but this isn't making sense. And this isn't making sense. And this isn't making sense, because how it went down was Shohei's people told him when they found out there was going to be a story from ESPN and the LA Times about gambling from Ippei. They said, okay, go talk to Ippei. They pushed him towards there. And then Ippei started talking. They said, whoa, no, this isn't right. Then your mind starts to think, okay, they're just in crisis management mode and there's something going on. So to think to myself, hey, there's a problem is not a weird thing to do, to be like skeptical and thinking cynical, even to a sense about maybe it is Shohei, and you start looking for all the little patterns that are in there. I don't think that's wrong to do, but after hearing Shohei speak, I'm like, okay, you walked me through everything, and I understand it now.
Yeah, I agree with you, Greg. I think, for me, that certainly, like, the stories from Otani's camp and Ipe lined up, right? It was both like, oh yeah, he agreed to pay his gambling debt, whatever. So that was like, to see things sort of change after that was concerning. And it was, well, like, was that true? And then Otani's camp realized, well, wait a minute, that's actually still going to be a problem for us. So that can't be our story. But yes, then to your point, hearing Ohtani, really lay things out, and in subsequent reporting since then, it does seem like whenever there was a conversation with Ohtani, for whatever reason, I mean, not for whatever reason, Ipe was at the time, he was an interpreter and best friend, right? And so he was involved in every conversation that, the Dodgers were having with, like, there was not any one-on-one communication without Ipe sort of in the middle, able, translating things. And at that point, I'm not going to say he manipulated what was being said, but it's certainly possible. I think now, the biggest question still hanging out there, at least for me, is, and Jeff touched on it earlier, is, okay, how did this much money go missing from Ohtani's account without him realizing until after, Ipe addressed the team on opening day? That's one hand. The other part is, yes, I do realize that these guys are superstar athletes, and Ohtani, especially, himself, he's not, he doesn't necessarily strike me as living lavishly and really beyond his means. I think he knows his money is there. If he needs it, it's there, and he just doesn't necessarily check.
I think Matt may be a more trusting person than me if he's not even willing to assume that Ipe was manipulating the translation this entire time. I was like, I think that's a pretty safe bet, Matt. I don't know, just me.
6 years of it.
Fair enough.
So one of the things that we talked about that you got into it just a second ago, Matt, is about the money, and like, how did he get into the money, and how does he not, does he not have financials of advisors? I think there's a lot of misunderstanding of how many people are in Ohtani's circle, I think. Because what it sounds like to me right now is that it's Ohtani, it's Nez Balelo, his agent, and it was Ipe, and that was it. And his just normal Japanese woman that's also a basketball superstar that's not normal in any sense. So, I mean, besides that seems to be his circles that we've always understood. But there has to be financial advisors and all those things. So, I mean, do you know what his circle is? Matt, you're there more often. You're at the ballpark basically every day. Do you see more in his circle, or is it
not
he kept himself?
Yeah, not to this point. My assumption is that maybe through his agency, there's like financial advisors that are sort of around to assist, but maybe not like don't necessarily have their hand in Ohtani's daily business or bank account activity. But I mean, there hasn't been, nobody has even come out and reported like, oh, like this accounting firm is who, yes, they're saying that there was these wire transfers that now don't look like Ohtani did it or whatever the case is. So, think about like his free agency and just his life in general. He keeps a small circle. And so I think that has been applied to, from the business standpoint of, okay, like he has the New Balance deal, but in terms of sponsor, and I'm sure he does more sponsorships in Japan that we're just not necessarily seeing every day. But Ohtani does seem to have a very close-knit group around him. So it wouldn't fully surprise me if he and his personality too, what we've seen of him, that he just didn't feel a need to have like a dedicated, maybe financial advisor, business advisor working with him day in and day out.
The thing I would add too is just the interpreter piece. I think that's what makes this so hard for most of us to wrap our heads around, because if you imagine like Mookie Betts, for example, and his team, they could always just go directly to Mookie Betts to get authorization or to ask questions or whatever, like if in case of emergency, right? But Ohtani, that wasn't really possible. Like everything needed to go through the translator. And so I just think the amount of influence and the amount of authority really that this guy had just by default, by being the gatekeeper to all information that was sent to Ohtani and all of the information that was then filtered back from Ohtani. I think that's the piece that we look at it on the surface and say, well, this doesn't make sense. Like, how could $500,000 at a time be wired out of his account unauthorized without him knowing? Well, authorization probably came through Ipe every single time because he was the translator, right? And so he probably had unique access where he was able to serve as a proxy for Ohtani in a way that, I would say on some hand, there's probably lots of athletes and rich people that have a proxy who can do things like this. But I think in Ohtani's case, it's even more so just because of the translation piece.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what's got to be, right? Because I mean, I understand it. If I would love for someone to just say, take everything for me. Hey, I'm going to
Yeah.
give you all my financials. We're going to give you everything, and you just kind of do everything. Sign the checks, move money from place to place. Just make me more money. I want to focus on running the radio station, being on Mason and Ireland, doing Blue Review, talking with Matt and Jeff because that's fun. Like those types of things, I want to be able to do. So imagine him at a level that he's at. Yeah. Where he doesn't have to, he shouldn't be touching or looking at anything. And if you're going to go talk to somebody, you talk to the translator, like you're saying, Jeff. So, and I want you to kind of talk about this. It's all kind of, I guess, intermixed with all of that.
Yeah.
But this part about it is really goes into it. After learning about his significant debts post-match at the hotel, he admitted to accessing my account and making unauthorized transactions. I think that got misconstrued by Will Ireton yesterday. I'm not saying he was wrong about it. It just didn't come across the same way. I didn't hear that. Maybe you guys did. But accessing his accounts, this means that he has full access to everything. And that's the way that they're going to play it. And now by doing this, they can no longer go back and say, oh yeah, he was just trying to help out a friend. That is gone. That does not exist anymore.
Yeah, that was the part that, again, I was most encouraged by as a Dodgers fan, because he had taken a lot of possibilities and pathways and gray area off of the table. We are now left with either Ohtani is telling the truth or he's lying. There's not this middle ground of like, well, he was doing this other thing and we just don't know yet. And so, yeah, I mean, again, I'm not surprised that a guy like this would have access. It's exactly like you just described it, Greg. Like if I was a professional baseball player, and again, this fits with the understanding we have of Ohtani, is that he is obsessed with baseball and he is obsessed with getting better at baseball. And so if your primary obsession, if you want to be single-mindedly laser focused on getting better at baseball, you don't want to have to be the guy that writes the check to the power company every month. You know, you don't want to be the guy that gets asked like, hey, do you want to move this money from this stock to this stock, or this retirement plan to this retirement plan? Like, you just want people that you trust to be able to take care of those things for you and you know, probably report back to you from time to time. But again, you're probably just trusting them to rely. I mean, this is something that, like, I would say even on an individual basis, like I'm not a person that checks my bank account every single day to make sure that the dollars and cents are all, you know, balanced, if you will. So I'm just imagining somebody who has way more on his plate than I do in Shohei Ohtani is probably even less interested in dealing with this kind of thing. And so to circle back to the question about these unauthorized transactions, it's not crazy at all for me to believe that Ipe had access to his accounts and could make these transactions. Now, because the other piece I would add too, all we know about, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, is two $500,000 transfers. There's a report that it's $4.5 million. I've heard rumblings that it might be double that. But what we know of is that there are two wire transfers. Is it possible that he had access up to $500,000 without having to get sort of prior clearance, and that's why these amounts were being sent in smaller increments? I mean, that wouldn't seem great. $500,000 is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but is it possible that that was sort of the credit limit that Ipe had to be able to do something without sort of like, you know, Ohtani's scanning his eyeball or something like that beforehand? That to me, this all fits as a very plausible explanation of how we got here.
So I just wonder, and Matt, you can tell me we're all Dodger fans. Obviously, you run Dodger Blue. To run a Dodger site, you got to be a massive fan. So we're all Dodger fans. If Shohei was a Giant, if Shohei was still an Angel, if Shohei was a Yankee or an Astro, would we still have this same type of feeling towards Shohei? Or would we really digging deeper into it and being like, I don't know about that? What do you think?
Astro, maybe. The rest of them, I don't know. I think I'd like to believe.
Yeah, I feel like that's a loaded question. You're going to get me in trouble. Our website traffic's going to go down if I answer this. No, I do think that, yes, if he played for a different team, there probably would be more skepticism from Dodger fans. And it's basically what you're seeing to a certain degree from other fan bases. But then there's also like just flat out misrepresentation and lying from people online. And we know, Twitter can be awful at times. It can be great. It can be awful. And I think we're seeing some of the negative components of it right now. I saw, I think he was like a Padres fan yesterday, like tweet out a video of Ohtani and Ipe in the dugout. And the guy was saying, this was, he was basically poking fun at Ohtani, saying he was shocked and saddened by everything because the video showed him and Ipe being perfectly fine. And it's like, well, yeah, that was the opening day game before everything really surfaced.
Right.
Like the reports didn't come out until after that game. So of course, like Ohtani, like he has explained now, he had no idea until after the game. So yes, he's going to be acting normal with Ipe in the dugout. But to your point, if Ohtani was playing for the Giants, if he was still in the Angels, yes, I think there would be a little bit more skepticism from Dodger fans, probably saying, well, wait a minute, what about this, this, and this? And I do think some of that is still fair, as much as, we can sit here and I think safely assume that Ipe clearly had access to his bank account just because he wasn't just his interpreter, he was his close friend. And so, his duty, it's well documented that Ipe's duties went beyond like, hey, Ohtani, you have a press conference or a media interview at this time, I'll see you there. Like they were together all the time. So if Ipe is going to get them, pick up food for them, like, Ohtani's not going and picking up his own takeout. I hate to break it to the Giants fans out there. So Ipe probably has access to, that bank account, that debit card, whatever the case may be, to do stuff like that. And I think he just got a little bit more liberal with the permission he had to use Ohtani's money.
Well, and I would just add too, like one thing that's worth pointing out to all these fans who are sort of almost rooting for Ohtani's downfall, like I hope they realize how bad it would be for the entire sport of baseball if the single most famous, significant, important person in the entire sport ended up getting busted for gambling on baseball in particular, something like that. Like the people that are rooting for that probably have no realization of how bad that would be, even for the Astros and the Angels and the Giants and that kind of thing. So it's just a weird part of our society that we root for other people, rich people, successful people to fail. And for a guy like Ohtani, who is by all accounts a good dude that is well loved and respected, like it just is bizarre to me. And I said it on our show the other night, like I despise the Giants. I despise the Astros. But there have been guys over the years for the Giants, like Bumgarner, despise that guy. He's the worst, like I was happy to see him fail miserably in Arizona. But like Buster Posey was always a good dude that I never really hated. I hated the jersey that he wore. I didn't hate him as a person. I wasn't rooting for him personally to fail. And so I would just like to believe of myself that Ohtani would fall in the Buster Posey category rather than the like Carlos Correa or Madison Bumgarner category.
Yeah, Carlos Correa is like another good one, and Jose Altuve too. But I want to believe him too. It's we just don't know enough about Ohtani. He keeps to himself so much. Yeah. So like while he's beloved, we don't know. Like LeBron James, I know I'm going to different sport, but LeBron James, as much as you love him or hate him, he has nothing on his record, all the way up and down. He like married his high school sweetheart. He has all his kids. He's at all the kids' games and does everything he can for them. He doesn't have a parking ticket as far as we know. So he's a star that has nothing behind him. So we know everything about him. He shows his life. Shohei does not show his life. We just found out he had a dog named Decoy. We just found out that he had a normal Japanese woman wife. Like these are all things that are just slowly coming out. And I hope that because he's a Dodger now and he's in a place where he's going to be beloved, that he was letting himself out a little bit more. But now he's going to go back in. I think that's probably what's going to happen there. We only have about a minute left. So just your final thoughts on all of it, on Shohei, what you want to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, he said his piece. I'm not really expecting much more at this point. Investigations are ongoing. MLB's investigation is going to take a while. And Ohtani said it, I just want to focus on baseball. And the Dodgers as a whole have navigated some challenging situations, but for better or worse. And so now let's just focus on the season starting up again.
Yeah, my last thing is I'll just be curious to see if we get a statement from Ipe. I think that's the thing I'm waiting for. Does he come out and own this and save Ohtani? Because if he comes out and says, hey, everything Ohtani says is true, I've been lying this whole time, then I think this whole thing pretty much goes to bed. And 3 months from now, we'll hear, hey, the investigation is concluded. Ohtani was cleared of all wrongdoing. Or does he lawyer up and no comment, and kind of drag this thing on for the next couple of months?
Go ahead, Parker. You can take it away. Thank you guys very, very much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, Matthew, Jeff, thank you for being here. And thank you to the chat, of course, for interacting with us. Matthew, Jeff, we hope to have you on more this season, just interacting and reacting to all this Dodgers stuff and Dodgers news. It's going to be an exciting opening day. Hopefully, we will see you there. We're going to do our best.
Sorry, Parker. I'm going to try and get you guys on to talk about actual Dodger baseball next time.
Exactly.
That's
definitely
the goal.
Definitely.
Please.
But of course, thank you for being here. And this was presented by LAX. So as always, thank you to LAX. This has been the Blue Review with Greg Bergman and friends. We will see you every weekday from 9:30 to 9:55. Thank you for tuning in. Catch you next time.